Dartmoor, rising like a great granite blister on the cheek of Devon. The Tor's broken tombstone teeth jut towards the racing clouds, which hurl their icy sleet down on the hills. You see what I did there? I used some imagery and stuff to make Dartmoor sound all dark and exciting. Let's try that again in a world without such imagery. Dartmoor is a number of hills in the middle of Devon. The Tors are big rocks that can be viewed against the clouds. It's raining. Today I'm going to talk about figurative language, a language trick without which we wouldn't have literature, poetry, comedy, podcasts, not podcasts. But even more than that, without this trick, I believe we wouldn't even have a satisfactory way to communicate the richness of human experience. The human being is a metaphor machine. Welcome back to the Dartmoor podcast. Look, full disclosure, this podcast might not be as Dartmoor specific as normal, but it's my podcast, so I reserve the right to waffle on about whatever I like. And I will be quoting some famous Dartmoor authors, so there is that. Anyway, let's start with some definitions. Imagery is any language which creates an image in your head, your mind's eye, so to speak. If I ask you to close your eyes, then describe, say, a fat white pony on a barren and blustery hillside, most of you will form a sort of picture in your brain. I say most of you because a surprising number of people have aphantasia and can't picture anything at all. And these people, other than being a bit crap at drawing, seem to get by fine. A surprising number of aphantasic people don't even know they're aphantasic. Maybe you're one of those people and didn't realise until now. If so, welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. Anyway, I digress. Beyond imagery, we have figurative language. This is where we use a description that isn't meant to be taken literally, to describe something in an interesting way. And there are three common ways we do this: simile, metaphor, and personification. Similes are where we use the words like or as to compare one thing with another. For example, the wind was as sharp as a blade, or the Tor was like a crumbling citadel. Nice, right? Metaphors are basically the same, but you don't even have to bother with the like or as. The river was a dark ribbon flowing through the valley. They're a little bit more sophisticated because the reader needs to understand that the river wasn't literally a ribbon, but still they're essentially the same. Personifications are a little bit different. It's where you give an inanimate object human qualities. This normally, but not always, means using a verb to describe its action in some way. For example, the gnarled trees reached out to claw at the sky. They're good for spooky stuff, as they create that uncanny feeling that something like a tree or a bog or a storm has a consciousness. Your environment is in some way observing you, perhaps even hunting you. So, what's the point in all this? Why do we go to such lengths to say things are other things? Well, I think the romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley had a lovely way of explaining the appeal of these poetic techniques. And yes, you heard correctly, his middle name was Bysshe. Anyway, Percy Bysshe Bosh Shelley said, "Poetry lifts the veil from the hidden beauty of the world and makes familiar objects be as if they were not familiar." Describing a Tor as a castle or a river as a ribbon makes you see it in a new light. If the description is refreshing and surprising enough, your brain is jolted out of its malaise and you look on the thing being described with fresh eyes. For a fleeting moment you are a child again. Notice that I said surprising. This is important. If a piece of figurative language doesn't surprise you, then you don't get this jolt of re-seeing. This is why in a writing class you're warned about clichés. Take, "He ran as fast as lightning." Maybe when you first heard that as a child, you experienced a fantastic momentary picture of someone flashing past. Pachow! Maybe you giggled a toddlerish giggle at the image. But now, when you hear that phrase, its power has been dulled by overuse. Cold as ice, dark as night, heart of stone, blah blah, there's loads of them. Stick enough together and you get an Adele song. Now, let's have a quick look in some Dartmoor e-books to see how the masters do it. And what better place to begin than Conan Doyle and the Hound of the Baskervilles? Through the gateway we passed into the avenue, where the wheels were again hushed amid the leaves, and the old trees shot their branches in a sombre tunnel over our heads. Baskerville shuddered as he looked up the long dark drive to where the house glimmered like a ghost at the far end. Glimmered like a ghost, eh? Very nice. Now what about my man, the Reverend Sabin Baring-Gould? In this lap the nursery of countless streams issue from emerald patches of bog, where bloom the purple butterwort, the white grass of Parnassus, the yellow asphodel, and the blood-tipped sundew. The rivulets become rills and swell to brooks which have scooped themselves combes in the hill slope, and the combes as they descend deepen into valleys, whose sides are rich with oak coppice, and the bottoms are rank with cotton grass, fleecy and flickering as the white clouds that drift overhead. One more example. Let's go to a bit of Eden Philpotts. A little later rose the moon, changed by aerial alchemy from gold to silver as she ascended, and all nature whispered a welcome sighing of peace. From tenebrious regions that slumbered, there grew a new world of wondrous harmonies in ebony and silver. A web of light rippled over the treetops, fell like rain into the forest's heart, flashed and quivered in gems of dew on grass and leaf. Shadows, inky and vast, stretched from the fringe of the wood, threw gloomy bridges across the water, and lost themselves on the other side. Moonlight and mist wandered in subtle union through the valley, and beneath their grey and silver the river dreamed away to the distant sea, singing the song of night. Philpotts could write all right. Shame he turned out to be an abusive, incestuous rapist pedophile. Now, if you're not an artsy-fartsy, poetsy-woetsy sort of person, then you might not think you have much room for similes in your life. But actually, you're using them all the time. Take these as an example. I'm on top of the world. I'm down in the dumps. I'm going up in the world. I've got a sinking feeling. I'm high as a kite. I'm in a low mood. My spirit is soaring. I've hit rock bottom. What's going on here? Up is good and down is bad? Look, there are some logical and psychological reasons why this is the case, I suppose. If you pile stuff up, the pile gets higher and more stuff is good. When you die, you get buried underground and that's bad. And when you're a baby and you get picked up for a cuddle, that's kind of nice. But there's nothing inherently good or bad about up and down. It's just a sort of agreement we've made as a society without really thinking about it. One of the most famous bits of research on this is called Metaphors We Live by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson. They call this phenomena everyday metaphor. Metaphors We Live By is a vast piece of research that illustrates just how many metaphors lie hidden in our language, and even affect the way we think. Let me demonstrate just how subtle and pervasive this is with a couple more examples. Time is a commodity. I spent a lot of time on this. I've wasted your time. I saved a lot of time. I've run out of time. Time isn't a thing. It's just, well, what is it? It's just sort of the speed of existence. But we talk about it as if it's some sort of giant temporal cake to be sliced up and divided out. How about this one? Ideas are objects. An idea is almost the opposite of an object. It's an ephemeral concept, and yet you stole my idea. There's a good idea in there somewhere. I can't get my idea across. Let's put that idea to one side for a moment. and so on. It gets very weird when you think about it, almost vertigo-inducing. Figurative language is a big strange lie that we use to make sense of a very complicated and confusing universe. Which leads us on to a rather terrifying thought. What if this language is holding us back somehow? What if we're looking at it all wrong? Lakoff and Johnson hit us with this wonderful example. Argument is war. Think about how we talk about a debate. I attacked the weak point in your argument. She shot down my claims. Your point is indefensible. He made a great counter. I lost the argument. Our whole system of debate is set up to be destructive and combative. But what if there was some sort of alien culture who, instead of using the metaphor of war around argument, used the metaphor of dance? Would they have a far more constructive approach to disagreements? Rather than trying to win an argument, would they instead build some sort of beautiful compromise? It's quite a thought, isn't it? So, where does that leave us? Figurative language, in the case of a well-chosen metaphor, can help us re-see the world as it really is by forcing us to pay attention to that which we take for granted. But, on the other hand, with everyday metaphor, it can lead us into entirely constructed ways of thinking that stifle and confine us. Anyway, I hope this got you thinking a bit. And although there wasn't as much local history or whatever as usual in this episode, good old Dartmoor has at least made a beautiful backdrop to my ramblings. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.